Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Excellent, you have tuned in. We're going to today look at the Behringer Tube Ultragain MIC500 USB. And this is kind of like a really interesting product because it's a tube preamp, which I'm going to test with a really maybe one or two nice microphones. And maybe if I flip this around here real quick, as you can see, it doesn't only work like a preamp with a tube, but it also works like a USB audio interface. This is something I wanted to test for a long time because in the past I always had one of these more expensive preamps. But the thing with the expensive preamp is, yeah, it's a nice preamp and it also has a tube, but you always have to connect the microphone to the preamp and then the preamp to an audio interface. So you have three parts that you have to use: the mic, the preamp, and an audio interface. And now with this budget solution from Behringer, not only is this like much cheaper, maybe I cannot say, but it's definitely cheaper, and you have the USB audio interface. So for people who are just starting out, that seems to be a really interesting entry-level solution if you just want to dip your feet in the water and get your feet wet, so to speak. So yeah, for podcasters or streamers that just get started, that's what I want to test. And that's why, like always, I'm going to connect my Shure SM58 to this interface. Maybe we also can test the second mic, but most importantly, you have seen there are some dials on that USB tube preamp kind of slash Behringer interface. And obviously, I also want to play around a little bit with the settings and see how this affects the sound. Does the sound get warmer or what happens? So as you see, we are right now in the introductory part. In a second, we're going to jump to part 2. I'm going to do an unboxing, show you some few close-up shots so you can see the build quality. And then in part 3, we're going to do the actual sound testing. I connect the mic, I speak into the mic, you hear the recording quality. And then also we can quickly jump into the computer. Since it is a USB interface and not only a pure preamp, I'm going to check what recording settings we can pick in the computer on the Behringer MIC500 USB. So guys, why don't we just get rolling with the unboxing? Let's get started. Yeah guys, now I'm super excited to look at the Behringer MIC500 USB. Maybe I've noticed in the introductory part, my lav mic that I used to record this product review was set a little bit too sensitive. I saw that and corrected it, so the sound should be, for my voice, should be perfect right now. So let's get back to this tube preamp slash audio interface. Let's have a look inside. First we find the manual and sticker. That's pretty usual with Behringer. USB cable, always good to have. And I see we need the power supply for this. Maybe if you remember, if you just get a USB audio interface, it usually doesn't come with a power supply because all the power is supplied by USB. But since this is a tube preamp, let's take this out here very carefully. Since this is a tube preamp, it probably needs a little bit more juice. And here you can see, or maybe you can see that well, below here sits the tube. So when we power this on in a second, that should start to glow. And I still very vividly remember this old radio at my grandpa's place. When you turned that super old radio on, it also had like a big vacuum tube in there and it would start to glow. And I always found that really kind of like had a nice touch. And these tubes are set to make the sound like a nice warm, give it a nice warm touch. And on top of that, there are these kind of retro style dials which I'm really curious to see, because my other tube preamp doesn't have these dials. You just have the tube, and if you want to change the characteristics of the sound, you can switch out the tube. And here you have a dial to affect the sound, so that's going to be interesting. So let's have a look at the power supply. Recently I watched a lot of videos on YouTube about premium audio equipment and a design they made in the US, and some people have claimed that the power supply also can have a really significant impact on the sound quality, at least like in the premium segment. Obviously, granted, this is a budget solution, it's not a premium solution, but hey guys, why don't I just quickly set up this at my computer desk, and then we connect the microphone and we're going to do a sound check. I'm super curious about all the functions that you can pick here, and we test this with different microphones. So that concludes the unboxing. You have seen a little first impression of this nice thing. This is a metal casing, so good quality. And at the back, obviously you connect it here, but it has a phone's output, so I'm assuming that it's like a direct monitor. That'd be interesting to see whether this only outputs, works like an audio interface that inputs a signal into the computer, but I doubt it sends one out. So that's the only limitation. But we're gonna check in a second whether this also can double as audio interface to listen to music, which I don't think. But let's get started with the sound test, guys. So guys, right now I prepared the test space on my desk. Before you plug in any mic, make sure to turn all these gain knobs all the way down. I'm just going to place this over here, and then we're going to connect the interface to USB. As I told you, USB plug at the back, so plug this into your computer. Then second, we have the power cord, which I'm also going to plug in right here at the back. And the moment you plug in the power, I hope this shows, this tube should start to light up and glow. And like I mentioned earlier, that's the one difference that this kind of interface has, because obviously most USB audio interfaces, they get their power just over USB. But since this has this glowing tube that produces this nice warm sound, you need to plug in the additional power supply. So we're almost ready to do the listening test. I'm super excited to see how this nice little tube preamp sounds. So finally, I'm just gonna plug in my microphone. Only thing that's really left to do is to put that on my microphone stand, switch on the computer, and I'm also gonna zoom in for you a little bit here and make sure this is positioned properly, because in just a second my picture is gonna show up here, and then we're gonna switch from the camera mic that I'm using right now to this tube preamp. I'm just gonna turn up the dial, and we're gonna see how much sensitivity and what kind of sound quality we're going to get out of the Behringer Tube Ultragain MIC500 USB. So let's jump into the computer. So guys, I'm going to turn up the dial. Test 1 2, 12 o'clock position on the preamp. Test 1 2, 3 o'clock position, and I'm going to turn it up all the way to the 4 o'clock position. And right now you're listening to the sound quality of the Behringer Tube Ultragain MIC500 USB. With a dynamic microphone. So guys, what do you think of this budget entry-level solution? I did a lot of research online, because previously I always used one of these pricier preamps, and while this is a nicer tube preamp, it doesn't function as an audio interface, so you need to buy the preamp for significantly more and an audio interface. And one viewer complained, oh, I'm on a budget, I want a budget solution. And I think that's a good compromise. It's a USB audio interface which records at 16-bit and 48 kilohertz, but at the same time it's a tube preamp, so you get two things in one instead of having to buy two more expensive pieces of gear. And from my testing, I think the sound quality is pretty damn good. It's not studio kind of quality, it's not as good as the more expensive gear, but honestly, how many people will notice that? So if you just have normal computer speakers or normal hi-fi equipment at home, so as long as it sounds nice and warm, and that's what the tube does, you can get away with totally normal, because like in these budget interfaces you just have, I think, normal digital to audio converters, but they do the job. So really affordable audio equipment for the masses, that seems to be the Behringer philosophy, which I found kind of interesting. So let's try some of these dials. I think there was one, if I turn this up here to vocal, I'm kind of interesting to see how that sounds. Guys, do you notice any difference whether I have it on the neutral position or whether I have it on the warm vocal position? I think there's not too much of a difference, but yeah, you have a bunch of dials. Some say also it limiter, so in theory, maybe it should function as a limiter. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2, and get a little bit closer. And I'm gonna go away again. But for the most part, I prefer this neutral position because that gives me a nice warm sound. And yeah, obviously we can also test the low cut. The low cut usually with these dynamic microphones, the closer you go, you have this so-called proximity effect, which can make your voice sound more bassy. I think it sounds pretty bassy already, but if I go closer, it may sound even more bassy. And if I push the low cut, it may be, if the low cut is good, eliminates some of this low frequency at the bottom, and it doesn't sound as bassy anymore. I haven't listened to it yet, so I'm gonna see myself, but I know from the other preamp that I have that low cut is really a tool that sometimes can come in handy. So it's nice to see that it's on the device. How good it is, I will see in a second. Sometimes you also have some microphones. They have, I think mostly condenser microphones, they have a switch where you can use the low cut even on the microphone itself. You see, like here, this mic has a low cut. So if you want to know, I'm also going to make a test of this AKG P120 on my channel, so you can check this out. But what we're going to do right now, since we're listening right now to a dynamic microphone, why don't we just go ahead and switch over to a condenser mic instead? I think I'm going to test an Audio-Technica. Like I said, right now you're listening to the Shure SM58, a mic that I'm really using for a very, very long time. Dynamic microphones, like I said, it's always very easy to handle because they pick up the sound just right in front of you. So let's just switch over to a condenser microphone and test the audio interface with the 48 volt fan power. So let's jump to the next mic. So guys, I now switched to a condenser microphone, and as you can see, this is way more sensitive. I think I'm gonna put this on the 11 o'clock position. I'm probably not gonna need to turn it any higher than that. And yeah guys, what do you think? Condenser microphone or dynamic microphone? Which do you think would you prefer? Like I said, the dynamic microphones usually are less sensitive. The dynamic I had on the 4 o'clock position, and now we're listening to the Audio-Technica AT2020. I hope this is visible right here. It's also a microphone that I really, really like because I think it has a nice sound. And yeah, while this is a little bit more of a pricey, high quality mic, maybe not top of the line, but a really, really good mic. It seems to work really, really well with this budget tube preamp. And also when I picked this condenser mic, I also paid attention that it has this cardioid pickup pattern. That's the keyword you want to remember, cardioid pickup pattern, because otherwise if you have a sensitive mic that picks up sound from all around, then you might have a hard time recording your podcast or live stream because the mic is so super sensitive that it picks up stuff from your surrounding. And a dynamic mic that's cardioid, or even this mic that's cardioid, is probably easier to handle if you have unfavorable room acoustics. Because as you can see here, I have a wooden desk, so the sound can reflect usually from the wooden desk, and the mic seems to handle it pretty well. Otherwise, you could also again use experiment with the low cut. This Audio-Technica doesn't have a low cut on the mic, so that now it comes handy that the Tube Ultragain has a low cut. We can quickly turn it on to see what the sound difference is. So now the low cut is on. I'm talking normally. In theory, it should be a little bit less bass at the low frequencies. Maybe reduce this low frequency rumble if your hand hits the table, or there's some sound that can maybe through vibration creep into the microphone. And let's turn the low cut off. And now you hear the sound with the low cut switched off again. So guys, this kind of concludes my test of the Behringer Tube Ultragain MIC500 USB. I think it's a really good solution. I tested this preamp right now with the Shure is like a little bit more expensive mic, and the Audio-Technica is technically speaking not in the low price segment. But I'm convinced if I would take a budget mic, and I think I'm going to do this in a further video. Just take a really cheap mic and test a bunch of cheap mics with this preamp. That will work pretty fine as well. In fact, we can do it right now. So test 1 2, test 1 2, test 1 2. Right now I've connected a Behringer mic, like a really affordable one. So just to prove my point, that seems to be also pretty sensitive. A little bit tricky because it's I'm holding it in my hand right now because I don't want to remount this. So I'm having the Ultra Voice XM8500, and I mean, guys, it should sound fine as well. So that goes to show that you can use a budget mic, you can use more expensive mics, and the real trick that I wanted to show you is like this Tube Ultragain, because it's a USB interface that has the tube inside. Because the viewer just asked me, oh, I'm on a budget, I want to have this nice sound that you have, good sounding quality, and the tube, I think that's the trick. The tube makes it like a little bit more nice and warm. It's not 100% the radio voice, because in the radio studio they have like all these, they have higher quality gear. The higher quality gear has the high quality digital to audio converters, and they use probably several compressors behind each other, so that's just a normal user can't have that at home. You would have to have a studio rack, but I think for the price it gets pretty damn close. I hope I didn't put it too sensitive. Guys, this concludes the test of the Tube Ultragain MIC500 USB. You learned something today, so let's jump to the conclusion. So guys, this concludes the review and sound test of the Behringer Tube Ultragain MIC500 USB. And one cool thing that I noticed, which I wasn't entirely sure before, I mean, as you can see, I also connected my speakers to the tube preamp. The USB cable goes from my iMac in here, and then down here there's the headphone output, and obviously you can connect your speakers to that, and then it doesn't only show up under input device, but it also shows up under output device. And you can listen to audio here. I have like a license-free song that I licensed, so you see sound comes out of here. Then the volume is very nice and strong, but only thing that I would keep in mind is don't turn this up all the way. Usually I leave it at 75%. I don't go any higher, simply because if I were to turn up the volume on this Behringer interface up all the way, and that seems to be like a thing with Behringer interfaces, I mean, I can show this to you here. I reviewed other Behringer interfaces, and these had the kind of same behavior that if you turn up the volume all the way, it can end up being distorted signal. I felt like a little bit maybe that's a driver issue on the Mac. On the Windows, I didn't notice it that much. But then again, this is just a quick impromptu review. So as long as you put the volume not up all the way, you should be fine, and it can produce a very nice sound. So you have the benefit of A, it's really cheap, B, you get a nice little preamp where you can record great sound. I showed you 3 different microphones in the sound test. And yeah, right now we're at the summary and conclusion part. I give this interface a thumbs up. For the price value, it's okay. It's very nice. It's not pro audio gear, but it's a super nice alternative to, let's say, the more expensive equipment that I usually always use. Because not only does it cost more, it also creates, the more components you have on your desk, the more cluttered it gets. And if you take something like this, you have like a entry-level solution. Only thing to keep in mind, if you want to use it as a sound card, the power supply also has to be plugged in. While you can just connect the USB, the interface will show up and there will be some sound coming out of it, but it will be very weak. So the power supply always has to be plugged in, the tube always has to be on, so that you get the nice strong signal out of this interface. Guys, I'm excited you're here. You learned something useful today. I have lots of more useful videos on my channel. I invite you to check those out as well. I see you as a subscriber, and in the next video, all the best to you and have fun with your new interface. Take care. And because you just watched the product review of the Behringer MIC500, you may also be interested in this white Yamaha AG03 mixer that I reviewed recently, because that also works as a USB audio interface, which is kind of handy. And yeah guys, I'm really super amazed how many people have already subscribed to my channel because of the useful content that I provide for you here. You can subscribe right now as well. I see you in the next video and maybe even in one of my online courses. Have fun with your new audio interface. Take care.